Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go.
So today we're talking about self-love, and funnily enough, this is our theme of the month in my membership, and I did a newsletter about it last weekend. So I've actually got the newsletter open so that I can cheat today and maybe read some stuff out.
Well, you're going to be all over this. You've got a lot more than I've just literally turned up and here I am. So why don't you start, Lucy?
Okay. Well, I think self-love is one of those things that you just hear people talk about. Oh, you need to learn to love yourself. You've got to love yourself. Da 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 da. And I think it can be one of those things where you're a bit like, well, what the hell does that actually look like? What does that actually mean? But first, I think it's important to kind of look at why it's important. And I think the reason why self-love is important is because if you don't love yourself and if you don't respect yourself and if you don't think that you are valuable and kind of worthy, then that is going to have a huge impact on what your life looks like, because it's going to affect the things that you do or the things that you don't do. It's going to affect just the way that you see the world, because if you're not in a place of self-love, then I think it can really, really, really hold you back. So I think that's number one. That's kind of why, certainly for me, that's why it's important. But I do think it's, it can feel a bit kind of like cringe to think about, doing things that show that you love yourself. But I think self-love looks many, many, many different ways. There are so many ways that it kind of shows up, and there are so many different ways that it manifests. I mean, it can look, I think one of the main things is that negative self-talk that we all have. Are we allowing that negative self-talk to just rule our minds 24/7? And if we are, then we need to get a handle on that and become aware of it and start to change it. Because if you are constantly telling yourself that you're not worthy and that you're not enough and that you're a piece of shit and that you're this and you're an idiot and da 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 da, which I frankly have done my entire life, as I'm sure so many of us have, and that's always there. But I think if you're trying to love yourself more, then it's a question of recognizing that self-talk and actually doing something to shift it. But the first thing, as ever, is awareness. But I'm just gonna look through. So basically, in my newsletter last weekend, I wrote that there are many different facets that make up self-love, and a few of them are. Should I just read these out?
So yeah.
A springboard. So I said, fully accepting ourselves, the good bits and the bad bits that every single one of us is made up of, knowing that we are inherently worthy for no other reason than we just are, respecting ourselves enough to set boundaries with ourselves and others. We've talked about this before, but I think that's a really big one. Being confident enough in ourselves to be able to say no to the things and people that we know aren't good enough for us. Knowing that self-care is a core component of self-love, and subsequently cultivating practices to back that up. Paying attention, I just said this one, paying attention to our negative self-talk and choosing not to believe it because we know that it is not who we are. Believing in ourselves enough to have the courage to try new things. Being honest with ourselves about who we are so that we can live a life of authenticity. Being brave enough to make changes when we know it's time to move on, and asking for help when we know we need it. So those are a few that I put in this newsletter, and I think there are many, many more, but I think those are quite a good place to start. I mean, should we talk about the first one, Polly, fully accepting ourselves?
Yeah.
Because obviously this is huge.
I think this is a massive one, because I think for so many of us, and it's just really sad and rubbish, isn't it, that from such a young age, we, someone might have taken the mickey out of us for something, or just made us feel bad about something we've done, or I don't know. There are so many things, aren't there? We teased at stuff about something at school. I was constantly teased about about having a really, really long neck. I was called Giraffe for many years. And I remember once my mum told me, she said to me, I had my hair back, and she said to me, oh my God, don't put your hair back because your ears really stick out. And so from that, I'm not joking, throughout my whole life, I've carried for like 50 years with me that I hate wearing my hair back because I feel I've got this ridiculously long giraffe-like neck, and my ears stick out. It's so, but it's ridiculous, and I know it's ridiculous. But those comments, which will probably just fly away, well, particularly the ears one, like a flyaway comment. So she didn't mean me damage, but this is what unintentionally we are receiving at young age, and then we carry these things with us because all we want to do is, as human beings, is to fit into the group and feel like we're accepted, to feel like we're loved. And so instead of the way we kind of protect ourselves from those comments is just to kind of go, oh, well, it must be me. There's something wrong with me. I'm just not good enough. That's, and you start to really dislike parts of yourself, and you start to have this terrible self-talk because it's a kind of a protection mechanism. So, yes, you're so right. So the first kind of part of all of this is just to bring awareness to the fact, it's like, there's nothing wrong with me. As you say, there is nothing wrong with us. We are all amazing in our own right. And it's our negative kind of bias in life where we're always looking for the negative rather than looking positive. And that, again, is another survival instinct. We're always looking for negative. So we kind of just pick up on all the negative stuff.
Yeah.
Can you hear that funny noise?
No.
Oh, it must be me. Okay. So it's just like we're picking up on all the negatives. And so that's what we tend to focus our attention on. So, yeah, first step is bringing awareness to what is going on in our mind, and then actually just accepting there's nothing wrong with me. I am just amazing. I am who I am. There is nothing wrong with me. And I think when we can accept that we are who we are. And I love Mel Robbins high looking in the mirror high habit thing, because that's a really kind of amazing action you can take every day, and just like look at yourself in the eyes and just see yourself for who you are. And perhaps one very practical thing you can do in that moment is just like, what is one tiny thing which I can see about myself which I like? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical thing. It could be, I know that I'm actually really kind, or I know that I'm thinking of this, I don't know, it can be anything, but just to find these little parts of yourself that actually you do really like, because we all have them. It's just a matter of retraining ourselves to notice them, and to kind of really accept them and accept ourselves.
Exactly. And like you say, you just said we all have them, and it's so true, because every single one of us, and this, I think, it's a good idea to, and this in fact is something I read in the book Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff, which was last month's book in my membership book club, and she talks a lot about and I know that you wanted to talk about self-compassion, so we can obviously we can cover that, but one of the things that she says is thinking about it in terms of that sort of common humanity, that we all have shit bits, but also we all have good bits. And when you're focusing on the negative, like you so rightly say, when you're trying to focus on something positive, it doesn't necessarily have to be something about your looks. It can be, and in fact, it's better if it's something about because let's face it, they are fleeting and they are not lasting. And actually, they're not what's important. What's important is the things about you, about your personality and who you are as a person. So, like you said, if you think about, you can say to yourself, well, I am kind, or I know that I'm helpful, or whatever it is. But I think if you when it comes to accepting yourself, if you think about it in terms of the fact that we all have good bits and we all have bad bits, there is nobody on the planet who doesn't have a combination of both. It's just not a thing. But I think if you're focusing on all of your bad bits, you know, it helps to think, well, we all have shitty bits and we all have good bits. But certainly self-acceptance is one of the big things, isn't it? And also that's one and the same with this feeling of worthiness. And, you know, two of the main limiting beliefs that we all have is I am not enough and I am not worthy. And those are the two things that hold most people back more than they realize. We all have some amount of I'm not enough and I'm not worthy. I most certainly do. And it's something that I've battled with my whole life. But I think, again, self-love involves recognizing that you have inherent worth just because you fucking do, just because you're here. There doesn't need to be a reason for it. You don't need to have done anything. You don't need to be anything or be anyone in particular. You are worthy for no other reason than you just are because you're a human being on this planet. So I think, you know, self-worth is a really, really big part of self-love. Do you?
Yeah. I mean, the worthy one. It's crazy, isn't it? We all have it. It's a very common trait again that we all have. And yeah, I also have really battled with both of those. And it's only really when I think when you start to, you know, you recognize it in yourself, but then it's actually when you start to actually do things for, and I really do think it's when you start to do things for other people that's when you really recognize it. When you recognize it in yourself, you know, it's that kind of like, you know, that well, as you said, it's that sort of common theme of oh God, Lucy,
the common humanity.
God, I'm having a real menopause moment.
Instagram
completely lost my train of thought. To be worthy, it's about really giving yourself an opportunity to just find the things that you're good at and also share those with other people as well. And I think it's just finding your place in the world, which you can share your gift, you know, finding your gift, you know, it doesn't have to be anything which is like, you know, ridiculously incredible. It's just like you share your gifts. We all have gifts. It's about finding what they might be and just using it. And that might simply be, you might be the most amazing cook. So yeah, use those gifts and cook a beautiful meal for whoever it is, you know, for yourself firstly to enjoy, or share it with somebody else. And it's just, yeah, recognizing the gifts within you. And we are all so diverse. And I think this is the problem. We look at these famous people who have, you know, who are multimillionaires and they're doing all these things. And we all think that unless we're doing that we're not worthy. But actually, when we can come to realize that that's not that is such a small minority, and we are all special in our own way, and we all have these incredible talents. And that's taken me a very long time to recognize it in myself. It really, really has. I think I've always been like, well, what am I good at? I'm not good at anything. And actually, it's only when you stop to really kind of and it does sometimes take time, unless you have got a very natural, obvious talent, to recognize what it is about you, which makes you, you know, which is you. You know, we're all, you know, as I say, we're all just so unique. It's about really celebrating our uniqueness.
Precisely. Exactly that. It's about celebrating our uniqueness, because we are, and we've said this so many times on Monday Motivation, which is that we're one of 8 billion people, and there is nobody quite like you. There is nobody quite like me. There is nobody quite like any of us. We are all entirely unique. And I think it's just getting to a place where you start to really lean into the things that make you you, and that includes those things that are, like, for me, it would be things that are, you know, quote unquote, too much. You're too this. You're too enthusiastic about things. I went out with a guy, love of my life, one that got away, blah blah blah, and I'll never forget that we were driving along one day, and I've always had this thing where I'm like ridiculously over enthusiastic about things. My sister's the same. I think we get it from our mum. and I will just, and actually I think I've come to realize that it's actually a really good quality, and good quality, but it was always something that I felt like I needed to suppress because it was just a bit much, a bit too much. Just calm, oh my God, just calm down, you know. Anyway, we were driving along, and this song, and I'm obsessed with music, and this song came on. I can't remember what bloody song it was. I think it was back in the like 90s. I think it might have even been Take That, Back for Good. But anyway, whatever. And anyway, I was like, and he was driving and I was in the passenger seat, and I just went, oh my God, I love this song so much. And I just got so excited because that is just who I am, and I have no control over that. It's just what I'm like. And he fucking yelled at me. He yelled at me like I had done this awful thing. And he was like, oh my God, you scared the shit out of me. Okay, fair enough, he was driving. But the point is that we're allowed to, you know, those parts of us that we might think are too much. And I certainly have many things that I think people might think are too much, but actually those are the things that make you unique. Those are the things that make you you. And if anybody around you is wanting you to suppress those things or dumb down those things, then they're not your fucking people. They're just not your tribe.
Right.
You know, because people that are not going to have a problem with those parts of you that, you know, it's just not a thing, because we are who we are, and there are always people out there who are people who are going to love every single thing about us. So
yeah,
you know, I think it's just.
I mean, I'm actually probably the opposite, in the sense that I, for so long, thought, I felt constantly like I'm just never, you know, what's my place in the world? I'm never really doing very much. I'm very quiet and, you know, quite relative. You know, I'm kind of an extroverted introvert, so I can be kind of loud and extroverted when I want to, but generally I'm quite introverted. I've always been quite, you know, just going through my life, going through my careers, doing pretty well, but, you know, quietly very ambitious, but sort of feeling like I'm never quite making it. And so having this feeling like I'm just never quite enough. What, you know what? I'm just, you know, who am I? I'm just like this bumbling person going through the world. And actually, when I look back now on reflection, I've done so many cool things, and every, you know, job I've done actually really well at. And so again, it's that sort of perception of yourself in these moments. And I think that's why it's so important to have some really practical tools, which I've now since learned, which I wished I'd, I wished I'd had going through my life, but just simple little tools like, you know, in the morning, looking at yourself and going, I am freaking awesome, you know, for example, and I am great. But at the end of the day as well, just really taking just a tiny moment before you go to bed and just picking out maybe just one or two things of something which has gone really, really well in the day, which has got, you know, which is down to you. And actually that can really just highlight to yourself, actually things are really good. It's kind of changing that perspective on yourself and on your value in the world. And now that's something which I have a regular practice of. And actually in my photos, I take screenshots now of any messages I get, any positive things, people thanking me or whatever, just not just to boost my ego and make my, you know, but actually more for my own sort of, recognition of myself, to go, actually, yes, no, I am, you know, everything I'm doing is really having an impact, and again, that increases your worthiness within the world. And that can sound quite big-headed, but again, that's how we're programmed to believe, oh, I don't want to, you know, I've got to play smaller. But actually, it's a real act of self-love, I believe.
Completely. It's ultimately, it's just, we need to start being kinder to ourselves. And if, you know, and that does include allowing ourselves to acknowledge what we've done that's good. And like you say, you know, taking a screenshot of a really lovely message that someone wrote about your podcast. I've done the same with messages about mine. And, you know, there's nothing arrogant about that. All you're doing is acknowledging that you do have good bits and that you are appreciated. And I think we're all so used to just beating ourselves up constantly. And it's just become this ridiculous norm. Like, the norm is to be like, oh my God, I'm just a piece of shit, and I'm just a fucking piece of shit, and I'm rubbish at everything. And that has just become the norm and kind of what's acceptable. And it's just such bollocks. And we need to just basically be nicer to ourselves. I think that is such a big part of self-love.
Yeah. And actually, when you see the evidence in front of you, and anybody could do this, you know, just literally, I don't know, screenshot something. I just have a little file on my phone. So when I'm feeling really lacking in confidence, really not liking myself, have a little flick through just to remind myself, okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's all good. And I think we need to have this sort of evidence that actually we are freaking awesome. And yeah, I do really think that's very, very important.
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you know, Polly, one other thing that I think is a really big part of self-love is, well, there's the saying no thing. We've talked about that. I know we've talked about that quite a lot in other Monday motivations, but I do think that having enough respect for yourself to say no to things that you don't want to do is a big one. But the one that I was going to say, now I've lost my train of thought. Shit, I actually have lost my train of thought. What? Oh, I know what it was. It's that thing of, okay, here is a way to ask yourself whether you're showing yourself self-love or not. Are there areas of your life where you know that you're not happy, whether that be the relationship you're in or the job you're in or the people you're hanging out with? Ask yourself, are there any areas where you know in your heart of hearts, even if you're not fully admitting it to yourself or anybody else, but are there areas that you are unhappy with? Because one of the biggest ways to show yourself that you love yourself is to move away from situations that you know are not good for you and are not making you feel good and are not making you happy. That is such a big one. And I don't think people necessarily think of that in relation to self-love, but if you think about it, if you are staying in a situation or a job or a relationship or a friend group, whatever it may be, if you're staying in a situation that is making you feel bad about yourself, that is depleting your energy, that you're coming away from every day feeling like crap about, then the way to you know, that staying in that situation is not showing yourself love. It is doing the opposite of that. If you remain in a situation that you know is hurting you or is bad for you, or, and I know this isn't easy, and you know, I take the example of my previous relationship that was really not a great relationship, and I stayed way longer than I should, because at that point, we broke up 7 years ago, but at that point I did not have the self-respect or the self-love or the self-confidence or whatever it was to get the fuck out of that relationship. And I look back now and I cannot believe I allowed myself to stay in it. So I think this is a really important one we have to ask, you know. And you know, a job is another big one. Like, I've stayed in jobs before that have been killing my freaking soul, where I just you know, gets to Sunday night, oh my god, the dread, wake on Monday morning, you know, you're literally living your life to get through the week, to get to Friday. That is not a life. You know, that is not what we're on this planet for. We're not on this planet to go to a job that we are just, quote unquote, putting up with, getting through the day. So if you are doing something like that you know in your heart is not good for you and is not what you want to be doing, change it. And I don't mean hand your notice in today, but just do something to change it, because you do have that option, you do have a choice. And it so often feels like we don't. But if something is really not right for you, even if you're kind of doing a little bit of work on the side when you're, you know, in order to try and get out of a relationship or get out of a job, you know, there are ways and means. But I do think that's really important. Yeah, can you tell?
I agree. And it's the same thing goes with health and wellness. You know, if you really don't like the way that you feel in your body, say you've got an extra weight which you're carrying, say you aren't as fit as you want to be, perhaps your diet isn't what you want to be eating, and yet you're kind of stuck in a loop of it, you know, a massive act of self-love is to make a different choice and to actually decide, right, okay, I don't like the way that I am living my life at the moment. Actually, I can choose to do something differently. I can choose to eat different food. I can choose to actually start moving my body more. I can choose to really start to take care of this body in this vessel. You've only got one body. And I think that is, you know, it really saddens me when I see people who are very miserable in their body, and they've really let themselves go because to me, it really does show a sign, and that they have, yeah, they just really don't like themselves, and they've just kind of gone, fuck it, I can't be asked with this anymore. But actually, it is absolutely 100% possible to make a different choice and to really turn it around.
Absolutely, and it's never too late. And I mean, you're so right. And one thing I think it's worth pointing out is that acts of self-love don't always feel good. So, you know, for example, not my walk yesterday, because it was a nicer day yesterday. But on Saturday, I went for a walk, a big walk with a friend of mine, like first thing on Saturday morning. The weather was absolutely shit. It was really windy. It was rainy. Didn't want to do it, but knew that was a good thing to do, that was an act of self-love, like getting yourself to do the thing that feels uncomfortable because you know it's good for you. And it sounds so irritating, and people are probably thinking, oh, just shut up, you annoying woman. I wouldn't blame you, but it is true. I think sometimes self-love can look like things that don't initially feel good, and certainly when it comes to changing your diet or changing, you know, starting exercise or losing the weight or whatever it is, yes, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna not feel great initially, but you've got to know that it's, you know, and we all do know really what's good for us and what isn't, don't we? I mean, something else like, you know, so like how are you spending your time? That's another one. Like, how are you spending your evenings? Like, how are you using the time when you're not at work to do things that show that you love yourself? Like, are you spending maybe too much time watching 5 hours of Netflix every night? Is that showing yourself that you love yourself? Or maybe would it be an act of self-love to like maybe cut that down for 2 nights a week and start working on something else that you're really passionate about, that you've been wanting to do for ages? Like, you want to learn the piano, so maybe you can do an hour's practice instead of watching another episode of whatever it is, you know?
Yeah. And I think ultimately the biggest kind of, you know, one of the biggest acts of self-love is really just reminding yourself of how you are constantly talking to yourself, you know, that voice in your head, because sometimes it can be quite shocking when you hear you know, if you bring your awareness to what you are saying to yourself in your mind, it can be horrible. And I know everyone says it, but you know, you've got to just think, would I say that out loud to a friend if I was trying to comfort them or look after them? You probably wouldn't. And ultimately, when we are being hard on ourselves, all it is, it's there's a part of us somewhere buried inside of us, which is probably a wound from some childhood experience that we've had, and it hasn't been dealt with. We probably suppressed it in there. We haven't, and we sometimes those feelings unconsciously arise. And so simply the best way to manage some of those old beliefs and which come out in kind of thoughts and actions is just to give it loads and loads of compassion and love, and that way it's incredible. It just sort of it just kind of almost allows that part of you to just be accepted, and then it kind of fizzles away. And that it really is the most powerful tool that we can all use for ourselves, is just to speak in a really lovely, kind, loving way to those little parts of ourselves which we all have very deep inside. And you know, again, it's that awareness of, if you are reacting to something in a way that is that you know actually is a little bit I don't know, it could be anything. If you get really annoyed with somebody about something, or annoyed with yourself about something, and you're being really judgy about yourself, it's like, oh my god, why do I always do that? I'm so useless. Actually, it's an invitation to kind of bring that awareness to that part of you, which is like, what, gosh, where's that come from? Why am I so triggered by whatever it is? Why am I so triggered? And it's probably because there was something in your past which had a feeling associated with it you never dealt with. So all you've just got to do is give yourself some real kind of love, compassion. I had this the other day, actually. I was doing it was actually in the middle of a breathwork session. I was doing a breathwork session. I was doing the breathwork with a facilitator, and it was so funny. We were breathing each other. It was part of my practice. And as I was in a really amazing moment, suddenly I had this very loud voice in my head going, oh my God, but your session's not going to be as good as this. This is a great session. But when I was worrying about what I was going to do in return, and it was such a loud voice. And actually it was all, And then I kind of had this kind of awareness. It's like, my God, what's that voice doing there? That's stupid. I'm in a really lovely session and I've got this voice. So I literally just kind of went, oh, that's my perfectionist. That's my perfectionist again, just wanting to do everything perfectly. And actually just went, okay, I see you, I hear you. It's all right. I love you, but now you can just go away. And, you know, it's amazing. Ever since that moment, it was a real moment of like, I'm going to put you, you know, I really do love you, but you can be quiet now. I've kind of really felt this whole wave of like that perfectionist part of me just sort of slightly disappearing. So it's really powerful.
Yeah, that's so interesting. No, I love that. It's 15:30. Should we? Is there anything else that you want to cover? I've got the only thing I was just gonna quickly do is that going back to my newsletter. I
need to get your newsletter, Lucy. I need to get on your list.
Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not all about being single and childless.
Yeah, no, I definitely need to be on your newsletter. I'm going to sign up after this. How do I sign up, Lucy?
You go to how do you? Oh, you go to lucymegison.com to sign up.
Thank you. I will go and do that.
But no, I was just going to say a few examples that I wrote that what self-love might actually look like.
Go on.
Obviously, we've covered several of them, but paying attention to the things that we're good at rather than the things we're bad at, looking for our best features in the mirror instead of immediately focusing on the not so great, saying no to something that we really don't want to do, even if there's a chance it might upset someone, biggie. Limiting our, especially at Christmas time, just saying, limiting our time with people who don't make us feel good, eating healthy foods and getting some exercise every day, even if that's just a 10-minute walk, going to bed early despite the temptation to binge watch that series on Netflix. We've all been there, haven't we? Challenging the thoughts that tell us we're not good enough and asking if the really mean ones are actually true. Signing up for the course that we've been wanting to do for years, but, quote, never have the time. Handing our notice in at work because we know the job is crushing our soul and we're here for more than that. And one more, refusing to dumb down the parts of us that some people think are too much. So,
what great advice.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, gosh, I'm definitely going to get that newsletter. It sounds amazing.
No.
And yeah, full of loads of great nuggets. And yeah, thanks, Lucy. Really lovely to chat, as always.
I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Have a good week.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Bye.